My friend said to me, Dorian, you need a Boom Vang on this boat. So I wanted a Boom Vang. I covet a Boom Vang. I desired a Boom Vang more than a child desires a toy at Christmas. Then I thought, what's a Boom Vang?
The Boom Vang is a block and tackle system on smaller boats, and it can be a piston system on bigger boats that attaches from the base of the mast to the boom. Its function is to exert a downward force on the boom. When one is sailing close hauled to the wind, this is probably not too important because there is a lot of downward force on the sail from the main sheet. However, on a broad reach or on a run, the boom can ride up, and when the sail twists, it loses power. So it's important to exert a downward force on the boom to reshape the sail and maintain the power in the sail. This is its main function. In some racing boats like Scows and lasers and stuff, the Boom Vang can also be used to depower the mainsail when sailing close hauled. In this case, the Boom Vang is pulled very tight and the mast can actually be bent backwards in order to reshape the sail. So the main function of the Boom Vang is to reshape the sail to get the best function out of the sail. This Boom Vang was ordered from American Sail for my American Sail 14.6 sailboat. These are the instructions that came along with it. In the instructions you can see that they have an illustration or a photograph of how they envision the installation of the Boom Vang. I did find problems with the instructions. In this, they stated that each strap should be angled about 30 degrees. That is incorrect. It should be about 45 degrees, and I will discuss the geometry of this with my next illustration. A pop rivet gun does need to be purchased, and I will talk about that also in just a minute. Let's discuss the geometry of the installation before we proceed with the actual process. Assuming that the mast and the boom form a 90-degree angle, the Vang will look something like this when installed. The instructions sent along with the Boom Vang state that the strap should be installed about 5 inches from the base of the mast, which is about here. The distance from the base of the mast to the boom is about 33 or 38 inches, so the distance from the installation point of the Vang to the boom is about 33 inches. The instructions also state that the strap for the Vang should be attached to the boom about 34 inches from the mast. Again, assuming a 90-degree angle and assuming that 33 and 34 inches are not remarkably different, this would state that we have an isosceles right triangle. Since the sum of the angles of a triangle are 180 degrees, and if we assume this is 90 degrees and we assume these two angles are about equal, which they are, this would be a 45-degree installation for the boom strap. And again, this is different than the 30 degrees that are stated in the instructions, and that's why I state that the instructions are incorrect. A cross-section of the mast, note that the strap for the Vang should be installed on the slot side of the mast. The slot, of course, is the sail slot. And when you look at the mast in the American sailboat, there is a crease along the mast. I found for good installation to have enough room to put the two rivets in that I had to measure about 3/4 of an inch towards the slot from the crease. So I was 5 inches from the base of the mast and about 3/4 inches towards the slot where I put my first hole for the installation of the strap. On the boom, we want the strap to be opposite the slot. And again, I found for this that the best point of installation was right along the crease, 34 inches from the mast. The tools needed included a power drill, preferably variable speed and reversible, I used a nail and a hammer to punch a pilot hole. I also used steel drill bits, a 3/32 for the pilot hole and then a 3/16 for the hole which we will place the rivet. A tape measure was used. Other tools that I used for pesky mandrels that didn't come off with the pop rivet gun included a large flathead screwdriver to sort of tap in the rivets and a hacksaw and a file to take off the mandrels. Lastly, a rivet tool will be needed. This can be purchased at Menards for $13 if you do not have one already. To use the pop rivet tool, the correct nozzle needs to be placed for the rivet you have. Then the mandrel of the rivet or the stem of the rivet is placed into the rivet gun. As the handle is squeezed, it catches the mandrel and pulls on it. In pulling on it, that flattens or pulls the rivet tight. As that continues, eventually it is fully tight and then the mandrel will break off and you'll hear a noise like that. That's the mandrel stem, that's trash thrown away, and then the rivet is cinched tight. I'm starting with the mast. As I discussed when we discussed the geometry, I measure 5 inches from the base of the mast along the seam in the mast. I then measure 3/4 of an inch from the seam towards the slot of the mast. I will repeat this on both sides. For the punch, I will use a nail. Again, showing the geometry, 5 inches up, 3/4 inch towards the slot. That will be my punch. When I did this, I limited it to one hole at a time. I'm going ahead and punching both sides with this. I'm using a 3/32 inch drill bit. It needs to be a metal bit or you'll have trouble getting through to drill the pilot hole. And it takes a bit of force. I think I didn't use a metal bit initially and I had to change the bit, and it's just showing that I'm using a different bit to get through. Okay, so the pilot hole is drilled. I'm now changing to the 3/16 bit. This will be the hole that will hold the rivet. That's drilled. At this point, I'm starting to work on the other side of the mast. Same idea. I punch a hole, I drill a 3/32 inch pilot hole, and then I use a 3/16 inch hole to drill the hole through which the rivet will go. Again, a bit of force is required. And through. This is the 3/32 inch hole. Good. Now I next place the Vang strap on. Again, at this point I only have 2 of the holes drilled, but I want to use the strap as a die for my next 2 holes. It did take a bit of getting in. I wouldn't advise tapping on the mandrel of the rivet. Here I'm taking the drill as sort of an orbital motion to widen the hole a little bit. And I'm placing the rivet in there. Now, as we discussed, I want it to be about 45 degrees to the mast towards the boom. I did not use a protractor to do this. Rather, it was an estimation. Again, using the strap as a die for the next one, I'm tapping a nail hole. What I actually recommend and what I did later was I would use the 3/16 inch bit and drill just a little bit to sort of score the hole, and then drill my pilot hole with the 3/32 inch bit. Now I'm putting the 3/16 inch bit through to get my second hole. So I did place the second rivet, or the third rivet actually, so I now have 3 rivets in. I haven't drilled my last hole. I wanted to make sure I got the 3 to fit. Again, at this point I'm using the 3/16 to sort of score it, and then I'll use the 3/32 to drill the pilot hole, and then use the 3/16 again to get the right width of the hole in order to place the rivet. And I'm placing the rivet. You can see that all 4 rivets are in. I haven't cinched them up yet. This is the rivet gun. Need to have it down, the nozzle's firmly on top of the rivet head before you start cinching it. First one came off nicely, and you can see how the mandrel broke off and we have a nice placement of the rivet. I didn't always have such luck. In this one I'm able to cinch up the rivet, but I could not get the mandrel head to break off. And I repeat that for all of them. And it takes a bit of force to accomplish this. The mandrel did break off that time. For the ones that did not break off but are cinched tight, I cut it off with a hacksaw. And then just smoothed it a bit with a file. So the first strap is placed. I am now working with the boom. As I mentioned, I will measure 34 inches from the mast along the seam of the boom and make a mark. Now I found I do not need to go towards or away from the slot for the geometry. The hole will be drilled right at the seam. As in the instructions, the strap needs to be bent. I did go through the same process where I tapped a hole, then drilled a pilot hole with a 3/32 inch bit, and then drilled a hole through the boom with a 3/16 inch bit. You can see I'm placing the strap again. Now this time the strap will be placed away from the slot in the boom. That's important. It's towards the slot in the mast and away from the slot in the boom. So I'm drilling my holes. I will then again adjust the strap, and it did take a little bit more adjustment going around the boom than it did around the mast. And again, if you look at the shape of the boom and the mast, you'll see that it's rounder away from the slot and it's sort of tapered towards the slot. So I'm placing 2 holes. Again, I'm going to estimate my angle at 45 degrees. I'm using the 3/16 inch bit to just score the boom before I drill a pilot hole with the 3/32 inch bit. I'll just do one side and then place the rivet to make sure everything's lined up as best possible before I score the hole and drill a hole on the other side. So all of my holes are drilled. I'll now place the rivets, make sure everything lines up well. And I had to work them in a bit, just like I did on the other side. And then I'll cinch them up. And that's the finished product. You can see that, and that's the mast side. And as I pull away, you can see how they fit. Lastly, place the Vang pulleys on the boom and the mast, making sure that the rope is not tangled and that the slot on the mast side is facing downward. Lastly, I've included several references about how to use the Boom Vang. The first reference is actually for a sea scow, but it's a nicely written setup instruction sheet. The second two are YouTube videos. I would encourage you to consider reviewing these as you begin to use your Boom Vang. I've also included these in the description of the video listed below.